We think by being vertically integrated, we can provide an unequivocally better experience for customers, but we can also take out a lot of costs through the value chain, both by, removing all these middlemen, eventually having gigascale production. And we started sowing the seeds for all of that before we even went out to raise capital.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Climate Tech 360, where we connect with diverse voices in the climate sector to make informed choices in supporting the future of climate tech. I'm your host, Samia, and today I'm speaking with Anne Lonnie, CFO of Aira. Aira is a direct-to-consumer brand and offers a complete and intelligent clean energy tech ecosystem for every home. The company's first product is the heat pump, and Anne is one of the very first employees that was hired at Aira. Before joining Aira, Anne spent more than a decade as an investment professional with experience across investment banking, trading, and hedge funds. She was most recently part of the investment team at King Street Capital, a multi-strategy investment fund specializing in credit. Prior to King Street, she was an associate at Fir Tree Partners, and she began her career at Goldman, where she was a distressed investing analyst in the credit products group. She graduated from Saunders School of Business at the University of British Columbia with a Bachelor of Commerce and Finance and is a Leslie Wong Fellow with the UBC Portfolio Management Foundation. In this episode, we discuss the economics of a heat pump and Aira's value proposition, both from a product perspective as well as from the company perspective. We talk about how the company is vertically integrated, their fundraising timeline and milestones, which is really interesting because the company's already raised $190 million in equity within the span of a year, and their recent $200 million debt facility, which is the first financing facility of this size specifically dedicated to heat pump securitization, and much more. And now onto the episode. Thank you so much for being here, Anne. I really appreciate it. It's early for you, even earlier for me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you because not only are you the CFO of Aira, but you've also worked at Vargas for a while. And you and I were just talking about how we have a shared background in working in distressed in New York. So I'm really curious to hear your perspective on climate tech and learn about the story of Aira. So first of all, tell me how Aira came about.
Sure. So starting point was that Vargas, as you mentioned, the Swedish investment and impact builder company that is behind Northvolt and H2 Green Steel, they identified residential heating as one of the largest contributors to CO2 emissions in Europe. So the concept behind Aira was pretty straightforward. We wanted to decarbonize residential heating and make a significant impact on climate change by making clean heat pump technology accessible to everyone. So we set out to build a company. We launched Aira about a year ago, and I think key for us this whole time has been to provide a really compelling consumer proposition. So today we manufacture our own heat pumps, and we make those installations available through our all-inclusive monthly payment plan, which makes it accessible and affordable really for everyone. So today we're more than, I think, 1,200 employees. We have manufacturing in Poland and real customers in both UK, Italy, and Germany. So it's been a cool journey so far.
Great. Well, maybe we could talk a little bit about the economics of gas boilers first. So gas boilers contribute more than a fifth of Europe's greenhouse gas emissions. So it's obviously a hugely important issue. Can we talk a little bit about, very high level, on the cost benefit to the consumer of a heat pump versus a gas boiler? So I have numbers for the UK market. An air source heat pump costs about 12.5 thousand to buy and install, but the UK government has a heat pump grant scheme that gives buyers $7,500 towards the cost of replacing their gas boiler with a heat pump. And I know that there are similar schemes in other parts of Europe. That compares to a gas boiler, which can cost between 1.6 to 3,000, depending on the size. So it's obviously significantly more. However, here in Great Britain, it's different because electricity is 4 times as expensive as gas. So my understanding is that the running costs can be quite similar to a gas boiler. And I'm not going to get into the seasonal coefficient of performance, but high level, heat pumps use 3 to 5 energy. Sorry, heat pumps use
Correct.
3 to 5x less energy because they're more efficient. So I know that every country is different with regard to tariffs and cost of electricity. And another issue is that installing heat pump might require upgrades to the home with regards to insulation, et cetera. But the headline here is that with tariffs, heat pumps can deliver cost savings over gas boiler. Is that a correct representation?
That's correct. Okay. So like you said, obviously it differs by market. But what's undeniable is that heat pumps offer substantial benefits over gas boilers. They're 4 times, at least 4 times more efficient than gas boilers, and hence, like you pointed out, they use substantially less energy to produce the same heat power. So by changing from a gas boiler to a heat pump, customers can save 40% on their heating costs, and they can reduce their heating-related carbon emissions by 75%. Now, if they were to use renewable energy to power that heat pump, that number rises to 100%. You completely remove your carbon footprint. Also, heat pumps don't require the same level of maintenance as boilers, so that significantly lowers the overall lifetime cost of the product. And then what we do is we also provide a comfort guarantee, which covers both performance, product, insulation. So customers really do have complete peace of mind for over a decade, not having to worry about whether their heating systems will work.
Right. I read that Aira is called the Spotify of heat pumps here. That's interesting because you're in Sweden. But every Sunday, when I look out my window, there's an Aira electric vehicle that's charging. So I guess one of your installers must live here or something.
That is too funny.
Yeah, every single Sunday without fail. So basically, if I were to install a heat pump, you would come in, you would do the installation, and effectively everything would be taken care of. In addition to applying for those government subsidies, do you also apply for that on behalf of the consumer?
We do. We want to be, or we are, sort of one-stop shop for customers. So we guide them through the entire journey from beginning to end, including helping them with subsidy applications and also provide relevant financing solutions if they want to or need that.
Right. We're going to get to that soon because I know you announced a new ABS deal in Germany, which is super interesting. But tell me, if I'm a homeowner, how does it work? I call up Aira and you come in and you assess the property, and then you give me an idea of how, where it's going to be installed and effectively how long it's going to take.
Yeah, so we are a direct to consumer company. So we have our own installation force, our own sales force. You can call us up, book a meeting. We'll come visit your house. We'll go through exactly what your energy use looks like, what you need, how big is your house, where could you fit the heat pump, how much would it cost, how much would you save, both on your running energy bills and how much CO2 emissions could you eliminate, basically. So we provide that entire, and like I said, we walk the customers through that entire journey to really make sure they understand what the offer entails and make sure they get the product that's best fit for their needs.
And how is that different from other heat pump companies? Because I know one of the major bottlenecks is support. And when we talk about sort of the green workforce, one of the major bottlenecks to deploy more heat pumps in the UK market is that there aren't enough people that are skilled in installations. So how are you guys doing things differently than other heat pump companies?
Well, so in terms of on that skill question, as of today, all our, we call our installers clean energy experts and clean energy technicians, and they're
Mm,
all Aira employees. In the future, we may explore partnerships, but our priority
mhm,
is to build a really strong in-house team to maintain control over the customer experience, to really ensure that we maintain high standards and that we provide excellent service. And obviously, we're going to need a lot of them over the next decade with the ambitions that we have. So we're opening Era academies across all the three commercial markets that we've launched in, where we're training new technicians and retraining existing gas engineers. So that I think it addresses the skills gap in the market that you mentioned. But there's so many gas safe engineers who can retrain with Era to become a heat pump installer, and we really do believe that we're providing an attractive employee proposition as well. That this is an exciting place to work, obviously, when with a potential for an exciting career path. And I think in terms of what really sets us apart from the industry is that, we are, I think, still the first and perhaps the only one that's fully vertically integrated.
mhm, mhm.
So we design, develop, manufacture our own Era branded heat pumps. We, like I said, have a direct to consumer sales model. We install it, we service it, we maintain it, and we provide a financing solution. And I think versus what you would perhaps find in the market today, it's an incredibly fragmented industry, an incredibly
Right.
fragmented value chain, and frankly, it's a jungle for customers to navigate.
Mhm.
So I think by being that type of one-stop shop where that really focuses on building awareness, educating the customer, providing price transparency, advice as to what product they should get, and all this, you know, extra customer service and support. I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I read a few articles where your CEO Martin was quoted and really talked about your value proposition in that you are vertically integrated. So um,
Mhm.
I believe that you've also said, or your company's also said, that it's been designed for quick installation, large scale manufacturing. I know that when you first started, I mean, I see this a lot with all the Vargas companies. Like it's a little mind blowing how much you've accomplished in the span of a year, and frankly, I don't understand. So I'm trying to I'm trying to investigate this further. But when you first started out, you were installing heat pumps that were made by third parties, correct? But now you're installing your own heat pumps.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And you started you acquired this very huge, massive manufacturing plant in Poland, which it was a former Volvo bus factory. It's 55,000 meter square production facility in Poland.
It's
And
it's actually 220,000 square meters. So it's a
oh wow.
sizable factory for sure.
Okay. And so you've started manufacturing there this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, we started. Um, so we got access to this former Volvo bus factory last year, and so we've been converting it into a Era heat pump manufacturing site that over time will have the capacity to produce 500,000 heat pump units per year.
Mhm.
So it's a sizable site for sure. And we started production a couple of months ago, and we're already installing Aira branded heat pumps that are coming out of that factory in our markets. So it's yes,
Crazy.
we move fast.
You do move fast. And how did you choose that facility? Why Poland? How did you locate it? And
Yeah.
I read that you offered those employees, the people that formerly worked at that bus factory, jobs as well, which is really quite amazing. So yeah, I'd love to hear about how you found it and decided that that was your
Yeah.
spot.
Listen, I think we started looking at facilities like the second we joined, when the management team was put together, really. And I think we visited 108 different sites, both brownfield and greenfield. And when this Volvo opportunity came about, it's just fit like a glove, really, to
Mm,
what we wanted to do. And I think being able to take on so many of the existing employees of that at that factory, many of which had been there for, I think, decades,
mhm,
was phenomenal. And I think it really, we probably, leapfrog kind of 3, 4 years versus had we started a greenfield factory from scratch. Really being able to get up and running so quickly, having such a phenomenal team of people on premise already who really knows the facility well, who knows what operational excellence looks like, and who I think we're all very excited to join Aira.
yeah. That's interesting that you looked at so many in such, again, this goes to the speed with which these Vargas companies execute. I still don't fully
Mhm.
understand it. So we talked about some of the bottlenecks in the industry, which was the lack of expertise with the heat pump installation. And you have your own sales and installation team, which obviously comes at a huge cost to your company. Um, in the long term, do you see yourself outsourcing the installation and maintenance, or do you think that, in the foreseeable future, you're going to stick to this model?
I think to at least today, our priority is to build in-house teams. It doesn't mean that we're not going to consider outsourcing or exploring partnerships in the future. But for us, it's super important that we can maintain high standards, provide excellent service, and really just maintain control over the customer experience. And we feel like we can control that better today by owning or sort of having those people in house, really, and taking them through our own Aira academies, train them into to how to do it. So we'll see. We're going to need a lot of clean energy roles over the next decade.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible that we'll use some external as well, at least for call it managing seasonal effects, sort of peak shaving. But priority is like I said, being fully vertically integrating and having that in-house expertise.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense because we don't know what, there are a lot of startups right now that are addressing this lack of skills in the market, but we don't know how long that's going to take and what form it's going to take. So that makes a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sense. Another impediment in the heat pump market, is the absence of urgency to decarbonize in the residential heating sector. So how do you overcome that? I know that there are various government subsidies in different markets. We talked about the UK subsidy for installing heat pumps, but it's still a challenge without this urgency. And in the UK, as we discussed, the price of electricity is higher than gas.
Mm-hmm.
Electricity is taxed for carbon emissions, which has to be
Mm-hmm.
fixed. And
Mm-hmm.
um, there needs to be a clear indication for phase out dates for fossil fuel heating systems. So, how do you overcome that lack of urgency? How do you encourage homeowners to install heat pumps even though they don't have to right now?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that's sort of call it lack. I wouldn't say it's a complete lack of urgency. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
changing, at least on the part of homeowners, where at least to me it feels like we're at an inflection point where awareness is growing, particularly in markets where heat pump penetration is very low. We're starting to see a change. But you're absolutely right. We need policy support to adjust the way that electricity and gas are priced so that it reflects their true environmental costs. And I think
Mm-hmm.
making gas artificially cheap by taxing electricity, that isn't just an issue in the UK. That's also an issue across Germany, Italy, and other European countries. And so I think what we need is governments to commit to the green transition and really stand by their policies. We've seen various retractions on policies in the UK and continual changes to subsidies everywhere, and that sort of lack of conviction, that isn't helpful. That really damages consumer trust, and confuses people. That being said, I think gas prices have also been incredibly volatile over the recent years due to macroeconomic factors. So I think energy security and energy independence, that is becoming more and more important for people. And by moving to a heat pump and, eventually building out an energy ecosystem just means that you can be less reliant on the grid and protect yourself from volatile pricing as a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're now in Germany, Italy, and the UK, those three markets.
Correct.
Okay, so you've acquired a heat pump installation provider in each market. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so how did you choose those three countries as your initial three markets, and where do you sort of see yourself going next?
Sure. We picked those first three markets based on their significant market potential and low heat pump penetration. Each of these countries have large populations and they have a high number of residential boilers. So today there's 130 million boilers in Europe, and over 25 million of them are in the UK, 20 million in Italy. And, over the coming decade, they're all going to have to eventually be replaced. So market potential in these three markets is huge. And they've also shown a strong interest in sustainable energy solutions with subsidies in these markets that are aligned really with our mission to decarbonize residential heating.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there any other market right now that you're interested in or eyeing, or is that confidential information?
Absolutely, plenty of markets in the Europe that we're eyeing, and we've been pretty bold. We came out early and said that we want to be one of the largest heat pump providers or sort of clean energy tech providers in Europe. So we're definitely going to go into new markets. We haven't announced which one is the next one, but stay tuned.
So, Anne, I'd love to talk a little bit about the tech, because from the perspective, my perspective of an early stage investor, I see a lot of early stage startups that are raising pre-seed rounds in the heat pump market, and the focus is always on the technology. So they have a novel technology for heat pump, which is more efficient and therefore better. And obviously it's the early stage and they're not raising a lot of capital. So it's a bit different from what you're doing. But what you guys are doing, and I think I see this across the Vargas portfolio, is you focused a lot and you've executed on the commercialization and scaling really flawlessly. So I guess my question to you is, as far as kind of the leaders in the heat pump market, how much of it do you think is really tech versus execution, commercialization, scaling?
A good question. So I think on, heat pumps specifically, it's not rocket science. We're not suggesting that we're coming out with a new product that is revolutionizing the heat pump industry from a product perspective. Now, what we are telling people, which is true, is that where our heat pumps really differ from what's in the market today is they come with really solid connectivity and control features. And they also look really nice, which most heat pumps out there don't, if you ask me. But what that allows us to do is we can remotely monitor all the Aira heat pumps, which makes it possible for us to diagnose and fix any issues remotely. So if a technician is required, an Aira technician will come to your house without delay, probably before you even realize yourself that you're having any issues with it. And with our integrated app functionality, customers can also monitor everything themselves, including how many hot water minutes they have available, the temperature in their home, their CO2 savings, their energy cost savings, etc. So that sort of setup, which I think is just, step one in our mission to really build and offer a broader ecosystem for the home. That I think, at least for sets us apart in our industry.
To be honest, I think that's very common across, a subset of climate tech. I see it a lot with direct air capture too, where we see, early stage deals where they say, well, our technology is different. And when you think about something like direct air capture, so much of it is scaling and commercialization. When you look at these startups, you have to think about, do they have the ability to scale? Do they have the commercial expertise? Because once you get past the technology, like, it's climate tech, sure, but a lot of it isn't just tech. It's really about commercialization and scaling.
No, absolutely. And I think, to your point, we've moved really, really fast. I think that, by the time that we went out to raise our first external round, we had already secured access to a manufacturing site in Poland. We'd assembled a world-class R&D and digital team. We'd started in-house development of the Aira branded heat pump, and we'd established operations in our first launch markets, UK, Italy, and Germany. We'd also acquired our first installation company. Now we've acquired 3 in total, one in each market. And I think that's been super helpful from a go-to-market perspective. We really acquired a lot of industry-specific knowledge, early on. And I think, got to be honest, super, super helpful to be part of the Vargas umbrella, because that sort of credibility, the credibility and success that they've already had as a sponsor of other large companies, made it possible for us to really go out and pick some of the best people in the space, both on and really across the entire, all the verticals that we're in, whether it's manufacturing, digital development, the R&D, finance. I have a phenomenal finance team, and I think quite a few of those people I would not have been able to hire if it wasn't for having that sort of backer behind me.
Right. So all of those things that you just mentioned, was all of that lined up before you closed your 35 million Series A round?
No, so the 35, the Series A is basically Vargas, right? So Vargas took that first. So, Vargas made that first decision to set up and fund Aira from day one.
Right.
And then I also facilitated such that employees could invest in the company in the early days. So we actually have quite a few of the employees at Aira have invested, and not insignificant amount of their personal wealth into the company. And then it was in January of this year that we took in our first round of external investors, and right. That was through our Series B.
Right. So that was 145 million in equity in your Series B with investors like Temasek, Altor, Kinnevik, Nesta, Statkraft. So I know Altor is obviously, and Kinnevik is within sort of your Vargas ecosystem, but you have some major investors, Temasek, Nesta, Statkraft. So I know that obviously the Vargas name and what you've executed with Northvolt, which is massive, H2 Green Steel, that's raised $6 billion, and Polarium, all of those, and now Sire and Aira. Obviously, it brings a lot of credibility, and I'm sure you're bringing in investors probably that another small startup wouldn't be able to bring in. I mean, you guys have pension funds in H2 Green Steel, for example, and infrastructure funds. These are funds that typically wouldn't get involved that early, but you also have, I guess I'm trying to figure out how you've executed so quickly. But you also, all of the things that you described in terms of like building that team, securing the facility. I mean, you were getting to work without having closed that round. So can we talk about what milestones and what you had in place ahead of that 145 million raise? The Vargas name itself isn't bringing in all of these major investors.
Definitely not. Oh my goodness, it's been a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work. I think in terms of milestones, being able to raise that kind of money so early in our journey, to your point, obviously tremendously helpful to be backed by such a credible and well-known sponsor from day one. But more importantly, we worked a lot, and it actually is true that before we even went out to raise that Series B, we had already secured access to the manufacturing site. We hadn't bought it yet, but we'd secured it. And we had assembled a world-class R&D team. We had started developing the Aira branded heat pump. We had hired the key people needed to establish operations in our first launch markets. We weren't selling there yet with our own Aira brand, but we had acquired our first installation company. So we were out there. We were out there learning. We were out there installing, as you mentioned earlier, third-party OEM products, really working on defining and developing that blueprint for installation sufficiency, which we think is one of the things that, as part of our whole plan or being vertically integrated, like I said, it's more than anything because we think by being vertically integrated, we can provide an unequivocally better experience for customers, but we can also take out a lot of costs through the value chain, both by, removing all these middlemen, eventually having gigascale production. And we started sowing the seeds for all of that before we even went out to raise capital. So we did spend a lot of time building the business plan and sort of getting the people we needed to execute on it. And obviously, phenomenal to be able to onboard such a diverse group of innovation, climate investors. We have investors across, 6, 7 different countries, and both within, private equity, family office, early stage venture capital, climate venture capital, innovation agencies. So, phenomenal. And obviously that's allowed us to continue to expand across our commercial markets, continue to really hire and train, launch the actual Aira heat pump and start production at our own factory. So, yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. I mean, I guess I would probe a little bit further there in that 145 million round is still a massive round when you think about a company that's been in existence for a year and probably doesn't have a lot of sales, because at that point you were installing third-party heat pumps while conceiving and working on your own, right? So there's still technology risk. There's obviously some execution risk, but that's a very big round on not a lot of traction.
No, it's true. You're absolutely true. We were just getting started. In many ways we were just getting started, but like I said, we'd been sort of working behind the curtains for a year before we went out to raise the 145 million, and 35 million is also not an insignificant amount, right? So quite a bit had already been invested in the company, and I think we don't think there's a lot of technology risk. The product is well developed. This has been around for decades.
Yeah.
The Aira branded heat pump is also based on an existing technology that's been around for decades. And so yes, there's execution risk, like with any other company or any other startup, and that's where I think our job during the capital raise was obviously to make all these investors comfortable that we had brought in the right people to execute on this business plan that we'd put together. And I think it was super helpful to be able to show all the milestones we had already secured in those 12 months from basically inception to when we went out and started racing that Series B. And I think people were impressed by everything we had done in such a short time, and we were starting to see traction, and we were starting to sort of get proof points that our business plan made sense. And we were already having great conversations with the banking community for financing solutions. So we I can't speak for the investors as to what ultimately made them comfortable investing in us, but we obviously spent a lot of time with them, with them.
Yeah. That's a very good point around the technology risk. And it goes back to what we were saying about a lot of this stuff is about commercialization, execution. And if you have a team behind it that's been doing it, Vargas is responsible for some of the largest startups in the climate tech ecosystem in Europe. So there's a lot of confidence in the commercialization execution. Then that certainly gives, especially these investors, because they're large investors and they're typically later stage investors. It's funny because with your team, we were sort of going back and forth. I think I reached out to them like 7 weeks ago, and we were going back and forth, and I wrote down questions that I had. And one of the questions was, do you foresee raising a round of debt in the future? And in the time that we were trying to set up this interview, you've already raised a round of debt. So I will get to that because I'm curious about how you think about that. But first I wanted to ask, since I have you and you're the CFO, one of the things that Vargas has done with their companies really well is you talked about how just that brand, it's easy for you to attract really good talent. But with a lot of early stage startups, they don't have the luxury to hire a large finance team straight out of the bat because they haven't raised a lot of capital, right? Usually a pre-seed round is like 1 to 3 million, and seed round is a little bit larger than that.
We also still don't have a large finance team.
Yeah, how big is your team?
Oh my goodness! So we are in Stockholm. We're basically group finance team. We are that in finance, legal, M&A, and partnerships is combined. We're 10 people.
Wow, that's not a big team.
So for the capital raising, it's really me and my sidekick Timmy, and then I have a general counsel. And then we have 2 people on business control, 2 on financial control, and a head of accounting. So we try to be nimble. We've obviously now started building finance teams in the market because it's in the markets where we're going to have all the growth. So we need to have people on the ground who can obviously handle all the accounting, business control, and financial control, and ERP systems and invoicing and what have you in the markets. But we're also still a pretty small team from that perspective. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I just assumed that the team was massive, and I was like, I'm trying to figure out how this formula works with Vargas. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's because they put in the money first and they hired this big finance and operational team. But I guess that's not it. No, I'm not getting to it. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, let's talk about your new ABS facility. So you
Mhm.
just announced that you have secured a 200 million euro debt facility. It's specifically for the German market. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so how did you guys think about this? I know that it is the first financing facility of this scale dedicated specifically to heat pump securitization. It makes
Mhm.
complete sense that you would do it.
Mhm.
Obviously, you and I both came from exactly the same world, distressed debt, so we know that it's not that simple to just raise debt.
No.
How did you think about this, and how did you go about working with the banks and giving them comfort around it?
Yeah. Gosh, where do I begin? Yeah, listen, I think um, you know, we want to make clean energy tech affordable and accessible to households across Europe. And like I said, we've been bold. We've been out there. We say we plan to serve 5 million households over the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is 5 million people are unlikely to be able to afford a heat pump, let alone sort of a broader ecosystem if they have to pay up front. So it was very, very early on, day one in our sort of setting up this company, we were very focused on we need to figure out a way to be able to change that conversation that you have with a customer where it's less about how much do I have to pay up front for this equipment, what's the payback time, and rather figure out a way to provide it, more as a service. And in our case, that has translated into us building this monthly model.
Mm-hmm.
So that we could really remove that upfront hurdle that the customer is facing and instead have them pay in smaller monthly installments over 10 to 15 years. And
Mm-hmm.
so obviously providing such a monthly model, you need funding to do. That's obvious. And the more sort of time we spent on this in the early days, it sort of became clear that this is a product that lends itself really well to securitization, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously has been done in the solar space
Right.
for forever.
Right.
And is huge in the US and starting, I think, to become bigger
In
in,
Europe,
in in
yeah.
Europe as well. And so, we just got really excited about uh, being able to set up a structure where we were fairly confident that we should be able to secure capital at an attractive rate, fairly high advancement rate, backed by the sort of attractiveness of the underlying product, and that over time this could become a new asset class, this sort of heat pump
Mm-hmm.
or heat pump slash PV backed securities, or hippies as I like to call it. That's sort of my my dream, to be the first public issuer of hippies.
That's
And
great.
so started working with we started speaking to banks about this when basically before we'd even launched the company. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point, we weren't getting a ton of traction day one about this. It was sort of great. We can be there once you built a 200 million euro portfolio, but in the meantime, you should probably fund this with equity. Maybe we can come in with 30% LTV corporate loan over
Yeah.
time. And then
Yeah.
we were just like, no, that's not good enough. We kept working on it. We kept working on the credit pitch. We made it obviously very clear. I think similar to how you need to educate the customers here about the benefits of the heat pump, I think we felt we needed banks needed a bit of education as well. And then once you sort of start learning more about this, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, here you're dealing with pretty high credit quality borrowers. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
all homeowners, so you're
Right.
already dealing with a different cohort than sort of traditional consumer lending, the consumer lending borrowers. And it's obviously like we talked about, it's a product that has been around for decades. So there isn't a lot of technological risk. It's pretty simple. And once it's installed, in someone's home, it becomes an integral part of their home. So it's not like customers rip it out or replace it for most people, not for 15, 20 years. So
Yeah.
very, very sticky contracts, obviously recurring revenue, predictable, and the fact that it also has this phenomenal climate angle, I think obviously also helps in getting people excited about it. So, where was I? Yeah.
No, I
Long
mean,
story short, we closed this first warehouse financing facility recently, 200 million of debt commitments from BNP, and it's obviously a significant milestone for Aira, but frankly, like I said, it's just a critical enabler to being able to offer an attractive customer proposition.
yeah. I mean, it makes complete sense when you talk about it that way, because like you said, there's not that much technological risk, and the consumers, or these are all homeowners, and it's something that's being installed in the house for 20 years. That said, it still has never been done before, because this is the first financing facility that's specifically dedicated to heat pump securitization. So
Mm-hmm.
you've still done it, and other people haven't been able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I can't speak to why other people haven't been able to do it. And I mean, there obviously are other facilities out there that are PV focused, like solar panel focused,
Yep.
and probably have pockets for heat pumps as well. But we started building this company with heat pumps being at the sort of heart of it. That's the core of our offering, and we view that as the heart of the home for customers. And over time, you can build a broader ecosystem around it. But it's really by getting a heat pump, and especially switching from a boiler to a heat pump, that a customer can really start reducing their CO2 footprint and meaningfully reduce their energy bills. So for us, we will, like I said, offer a broader ecosystem over time too, and not just the heat pump. We will be offering PVs, EV chargers, battery inverter, our own tariff, but you have to start somewhere. We started with a heat pump, and we think we have an attractive enough value proposition, and that we are even already a sizable, incredible enough company to that can really scale our heat pump volume over the next few years. And I guess that's what we were able to convince banks that we will be doing, so that it justifies setting up these first heat pump dedicated warehouse financing facility.
One final question. You previously worked for Vargas, right? How long did you work there before you joined Aira?
No, I didn't. We were just no. I think you probably assessed that I was at Vargas on my LinkedIn, because until we revealed the name of the company, we were sort of working for Vargas until we revealed that Aira was coming. Yeah.
Got it.
So okay. I know. So I went straight from the US to Stockholm to start setting up Aira.
And what do you feel is part of the magic around being a Vargas portfolio company?
Well, I don't think I feel that magic every day, but I mean, it was obviously a big reason for why or what made me comfortable, I guess, in sort of taking that leap from my sort of past career to setting up the company from scratch. It obviously made a big difference, having the support and backing from Vargas. And we're super fortunate, very proud to be part of the Vargas family. Absolutely invaluable when it comes to access to expertise, access to contacts. They've obviously scaled companies that disrupt various sectors before, so they have significant knowledge in vertical integration. The foundation of our business model, basically, and a phenomenal network when it comes to financing, access to people. That said, nothing comes for free just because we're a Vargas company. So we have to continuously deliver on our plans, deliver towards our goals. And I think while we operate in a different industrial vertical than our sister companies, and we're the only direct to consumer company, I think our affiliation provides us with credibility, and that's super helpful.
Yeah. And, I would say the other companies are really first of a kind technologies. I mean, heat pumps have been around for a long time.
Yeah, heat pumps have been around for decades. And they've been around for decades. They work really well, even in Sweden and Norway, where I'm from. Where temperatures can be absolutely freezing during the winter. They work well, but it's also an industry where there hasn't been a ton of innovation for forever, and that was one of the things that got me excited about joining this. Like, here we can come in, we can shake up this industry a little bit. There's going to be a need for several companies like us because there's so much potential to really increase heat pump penetration across Europe. So if we're not going to do it, someone else is going to do it. And it's like I said, it's exciting to be able to build something where you feel like you feel it and you see it every day, that we are providing something that's unequivocally better for customers than what they've been dealing with for the last few years in terms of trying to navigate a pretty complex, fragmented, confusing industry. And then obviously, I love the look of our products as well, and I think that sets us apart. It's we care about design, and very, very customer focused. And I think a lot of most heat pumps have before Aira sort of designed or produced with the installer in mind, which is just a function of how the traditional value chain works. But being a direct-to-consumer company, we could change that and create a product that's designed with the consumer in mind, that's consumer friendly, both from a user interface and app functionality and what have you. So super, super exciting.
And do you have an Aira heat pump in your house?
No, I don't. But that's because I don't have the house, I don't have a house. I live in an apartment where there's, I think the building has basically a ground source heat pump, but it's not an Aira heat pump. I'll have to wait until I get my own detached house to be able to buy the first Aira heat pump.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It was such a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. This is fun.
And that is it for today's episode with Anne Lonnie. If you found it useful, please subscribe and write a positive review because it helps people discover the podcast. Thank you for listening, everyone, and catch you at the next one. Bye.